What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sonic Movie Show, the only show about Sonic news, movie news, and Sonic movie news. My name is Ethan, and with me here to Kuni Nina Nonin Up is Devin. I don't know what I did there.
Oh man, he's hot. He's so hot. Sorry. Oh man, he's so hot.
Who says that?
It's like right in the beginning. I think one of the girls in the bleachers says it about.
Okay. Yeah.
What's his name? Haru, I think.
Yeah.
When he's
Okay.
dribbling,
Okay.
going hard in the
Makes
paint.
sense.
You know what I mean?
I'm thinking like the giant dog man for some reason. Someone's saying that about him,
Yeah.
or something like that. Interesting.
It's the closest to like the classic Squidward line,
Right.
that
Oh,
we
no,
we
he's
love
not.
and yeah, he's. I fucking love. I actually was watching. I was like scrolling on TikTok last night.
Yeah.
And freaking whole episode of SpongeBob was just on there, and I just wound up
course.
watching like 50% of it. It was the one with the slash slinging slash slasher, whatever the freaking thing is.
Yeah.
But I just like went to the end. I just went to the end where Squidward was like, "Oh, I'm just messing with you," and then it picks up from there, and then
I got
classic.
you.
Nosferatu.
And ends with SpongeBob saying, "Do you have references?" And I remember laughing at that just because he said something funny. But years later, I'm like, "Oh, that's what he actually means." Like, weird. I don't know. And the show that keeps on giving. I will say this: like, undisputed funniest cartoon of all time is SpongeBob.
Oh, easily. No one will ever top it. You know, like, there's kids who are growing up with like Rick and Morty and whatever, but you just had to be there. You had to be. You had to be there when it was coming out. When it was coming out.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just perfect. SpongeBob is perfect. Now, granted, I've seen the first 5 seasons generously. First 3 seasons, amazing. Those were like the pinnacle. Season 3 specifically. That's when the creativity was flying. Season 4, I remember being good, but the animation, like, I think looking back on it now as an adult, what I really mean is that, like, SpongeBob, like, I want to say it's more zoomed in. Characters take up more of the screen in a lot of the scenes. Maybe I'm making this up, but SpongeBob felt big.
It's more modern,
you know. And then I remember seeing season 5 a little bit,
design.
but then like I haven't seen any episodes since. And like there's a Patrick show, and then there's
there's Camp Coral,
a Camp Coral show,
which is
apparently
I guess
on
a
the Patrick
claymation
show
kind of look. I don't think it is claymation, but it has that kind of look.
Some
to
sort
it.
of 3D look. Apparently on the Patrick show, there's a character who they used to lampoon like the nostalgia critic and angry video game nerd type of YouTubers.
I saw something on Twitter about that. I just didn't get it, but
yeah, which is funny. Like angry video game nerd was a genuine person that's doing a bit, and you could tell. Nostalgia critic is just a guy that wishes he could make things as good as the things he pretends are bad, just like us. We watched today the 2019 direct animation film Ni no Kuni, based off the video game series of the same name. This was nice that it was on Netflix. Reminds me of Dragon Quest Your Story, and how that was on Netflix, and we're like, easy. At least it was for me, because most of them were having to pay on Amazon to watch them. Before we begin talking about what we thought of the movie and all that, we kind of have to talk a bit about the games, and if we played them before, we
are
knowledgeable on them. I'll go first. Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch was a 2013 PlayStation 3 game that I had digitally only. It was like the first ever like full game, boxed game that I got digitally, because most of those PS3 games they were not digitally. Like, you had to buy a box, but like that 2012, 2013 era, they're like, well, I guess if they're going to give us money, we could sell it on here. That's how I got it there, because I got it on a super sale. I played a bit of that. I eventually did buy like the disc for my collection, because it's a good box art. I played maybe a quarter of that game before bouncing off, like other games came out or something like that. And PlayStation 4, I think, really was like, oh, there's PS4 games to play instead. Years later, I found out that that's the second game, and that there was a DS game just simply titled Ni no Kuni. Maybe it's not titled simply Ni no Kuni, maybe it has a subtitle, but I'm pretty sure it's just called Ni no Kuni. But then there was, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch on PlayStation 3. Loved that game for what I played on it. Very different from the JRPGs I had played, Japanese role-playing games that I had played. Where, like, it was, like, a little bit like Pokemon, like, you had these monsters. But, like, it was a somewhat real-time combat system. I was not used to that. And then on PlayStation 4, and I think maybe Switch, there's a sequel to a PS3 game. But the box art has, like, different people on it, so I don't know if it's that. But Ni no Kuni 2 is what they called it. Something about a prince. The prince who lived, I don't know, something like that. He's got, like, cat ears or something on it. So, I played a bit of Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch, and I remember finding its premise interesting. It was, like, 50s era, I thought America, but it was probably Japan. There was a Studio Ghibli involvement with it, where they might have designed the characters. Maybe they did the anime, like, intro and stuff like that. Made by Level 5, who at that time they were like Japanese darlings. They were the small company, and like all they made were awesome stuff. And then like their name kind of like fizzled out as they realized that mobile gacha games could make them a lot of money. But yeah, I remember being shocked because like you play as like a 9-year-old boy or something like that who gets transported to this fantasy world in his grief after realizing that he's responsible for his mom drowning to death. As she tried to save him. And then but then I never beat that game, so I don't know how it works out. I feel like it's probably a bittersweet ending, but like he realizes that his mom's alive in this world, and the White Witch, I assume the White Witch, because some bad person has her. And so he's got to save his mom, but maybe now knowing how this movie states its world connections, and like, oh, it's probably is a very bittersweet ending. We're like, no, dog, your mom's dead. You shouldn't have been a 9-year-old boy playing by the river. But it left an impact on me, but I never finished it. So then, I see this movie on Netflix randomly one time being like, why isn't this on my list? Realizing that film came out in 2019. I had made that list 2019, so it might have predated that movie. Yeah. So, yeah. How about you? Do you know anything about Ni no Kuni at all?
Well, I didn't know. It wasn't until watching this movie and about 45 minutes in realizing that Ni no Kuni means another world in Japanese. I thought
now
it was.
I'm learning that for the first time.
Because they said it, and I'm like, and I watched like the subtitled version, and
okay.
And they said Ni no Kuni, and I'm like, and I look down, it's just another world, and I'm like, what? God damn it! Like. I just thought it was like a cool, fancy, like fantasy made up thing, and it's like, nope, it just means another world in Japanese. So there you go. But yeah, I didn't know jack shit about this game going in. I just knew it was a JRPG. I know my partner said she played it with her brother.
She played the same one I played.
Yeah, I'm looking at when. So the Wrath of the White Witch came out in 2011. So she said when she was a. So in Japan,
I played in 2013. I guess I got it really late.
PS3 in 2011.
Huh.
And there was a couple other ones for. The one on DS was Dominion of the Dark Jijin, or whatever how you pronounce that. 2010. But she said she played when she was a kid, and I'm like, now I'm looking at these dates. She really wasn't a kid anymore, because we were in 11th grade at that point, 2011.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, regardless, so she's played it and had knowledge of it, and she's briefly told me about what it is, and I'm always shocked that she's played a game like that, considering she says she doesn't like video games really. But yeah, her and her brother played it, I guess, and so yeah, going in, I really had no idea. I didn't even know that there was a real world, quote unquote. Like I was expecting. And then this day the knight was born, and like I was waiting for like a fantasy thing right away, and that was gonna be it. Like kind of like your story there that we watched,
Dragon Quest.
Yeah, without actually there being like a whole meta thing in that film, but
right.
I really thought it was just gonna be just a fantasy game or a movie. So yeah, just watching this, I was like, oh, Oh, they play basketball. Interesting. Didn't know that. And yeah, just I had really no knowledge going in. Besides, I knew a second one came out a couple years ago, and it got decent reviews. That's really it. I literally had. This is close to like a lot of my knowledge of some of the more obscure things we've watched, where like I've just heard of it or seen it at a GameStop, and that's been it. So
yeah,
like I looked up screenshots of the game because I'm like I don't even know what it looks like visually, like for reference of. I remember it was kind of animated from Kuni too, but I'm like trying to look at the first one. So
the first one had Studio Ghibli involved. Well, Wrath of the White Witch had Studio Ghibli involvement, but the second one didn't, to my knowledge. And same thing with this movie. Ghibli is not involved with this movie, as some people like to harp on this movie, like, oh, you're ripping off Ghibli. Like, no, they helped design the look of the world. They're not the creators of an animation style.
That means he can't use it afterwards if he's not. If he ain't there, can't use it.
I'm pretty sure that each Ni no Kuni story has its own unique characters and stuff. However, spoilers. We were going to talk about the movie in depth anyway, but like spoilers, the old man, 90% sure he's the little boy from Wrath of the White Witch because he wears the same outfit.
Oh, probably.
And like,
probably then.
Think about that game being like 50s era, real world. He's an old man. They got smartphones and tablets now, so like Also, Yusuke, his like adoptive sister or whatever, the florist lady, Misaki, definitely drives that Honda Cube minivan that had the hamsters in the commercial. That's definitely what that's supposed to be. But
it's crazy to see that car like in a anything because. Here in America, if you see one of those, usually it's like
you beat it the fuck up.
Like it's just a big box car.
Yeah, you run it over with our big American trucks. That's the thing too. Like
or Fords.
That's not a small car. You know what I mean? Like
it's a box. SUV thing. I don't know how to even describe it other than that.
It's like, hey, Hummers are expensive. What if we got something else that's garish and trendy? But that we gotta remember, like the design of cars. From 2000 onwards, they were trying to avoid the inevitable blob-like shape that all vehicles, especially SUVs, are. I hate the look of SUVs. I feel like a minivan looks better. I want flatter edges. I don't want a cube. I don't want the box car.
No, yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean?
There's so many like here in Colorado. It's like Subaru Nation over here, and
I get it. Aerodynamics. I get it.
Yeah, and like. I used to have a Subaru, and it was kind of rounded, but it was fine. I liked it. And, like, all the new Subarus are even more round. But, like, all the ones that are, like, early 2000s and 90s all have that hatchback look. Like, a Subaru 1996, like, Outback, if you look that one up. Okay. They just look so old school. They look like a dude from Vermont. Like, that's the energy you get from it, and I just love it.
Going fishing.
Fishing. I'm going with my son camping for the weekend. I'll bring
Timothy,
him,
my
I'll bring
son,
him back
and
on
I
Monday.
will be bringing back a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
I'm happy with my Hyundai.
At least the box cars
have
some personality.
Yeah, even though they looked ridiculous, but at least they tried. You know what I mean?
I'll give them credit. I'll give them credit for that one.
Because there's supercars, and there's like the expensive shit, like. But I want like consumer like cars people actually give a shit about to like use. You know what I mean? In any case, we just jumped there to talking about an old man and then a car. The movie, to summarize it, and I actually had trouble because I'm used to watching some of these on Amazon Prime Video where I can open up the X-ray and then see hand-to-hand and like subtitles on to combat. See the names of characters. And like when it comes to Japanese names, sometimes I really have to see them or hear them repeatedly said in order for me to understand. Like Haru Yusuke.
You or in the anime or the I don't know if did you watch the
I watched
English
the dubbed version. Yeah.
Okay, I watched the subtitles.
I saw our boy Ray Chase was in it. I don't know who Ray Chase played, but he's the near replicant protagonist, the older version. He voices him. He's also Noctis in Final Fantasy 15, who is not in that movie. So you don't know, listener, unless you played that game. Yeah, no, I watch the dub version. That's usually what I do. It depends. For me, like
I'm
subs
a
and
subtitles.
dubs, it depends.
I try to be as it was made for, as it
if
was
I
intended.
can knock you down a peg here, as I like to knock down a lot of these subtitle whores out there, I can say
God.
I'm tired of watching the bottom third of a TV, which is true. I actually like to watch the animation. But here's my thing. It depends on the production. I've watched trashy, even worse than Naruto levels of a story that never ends. We just want to have action figures. Not action figures, but, a show called Fairy Tail. I watched that in college briefly, and I started with the dubbed version. And those voices pissed me off. So yeah, I went to the subtitle version because these characters are going to say stupid, ridiculous shit. I'd like to not have the cringy, embarrassing factor of a language I understand being spoken at me. I get it. But it depends on the production. Some of them have really good localization. Some of them have really good voice acting. Cowboy Bebop's a perfect example of that. Localization. There's a joke that I bet the Japanese version has differently, and it was localized into English and how it matters to Americans. So, like, you and Haru, they walk up to the castle gates. There's like, who are you? You can't just walk in here. And Haru's like, we're townsperson A and B. And I guarantee
that's
that,
in
like,
Japanese cut.
The subtitles are. But I bet what they're saying there is probably a different type of joke on Japanese norms and that type of stuff that just doesn't make any sense for over here. So they wrote.
Well, I understand Japanese, so.
Oh, you do? Well, yeah. Then, obviously,
I learned it.
Subtitles.
I learned it over the weekend. I did the homework.
That is the thing prepared. Too. That defeats what I'm saying here. If you obviously know the language, then yeah, listen to it in that language, because yes, you will. But if you know the culture and the language, sure. But for me, there's a lot of really good dubbing, and there's a lot of good localization efforts that make it worthwhile to watch in English. And also, I don't necessarily buy when people say that they want to have the original vision and all that, because some of those people, they just write what they write. You know what I mean?
I'm a purist. I don't
know. I don't buy it.
I mean, and I'm hoping to go to Japan next year, so I'm trying to like watch more like anime.
I'm gonna give you a list. You're gonna spend $800 on me. I'm not paying you any money. You're gonna spend $800 on giving me stuff. So I'm gonna give you a big spreadsheet with it's gonna be like a flow chart.
You're better off just getting it imported then at that point.
No, I'm not paying for it. You are. That's the point. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
I digress.
No, I mean I'm trying to like just get more familiar, like, because for me, when I've gone to Germany twice, like, and in a totality I've been in Germany. It's 2 separate times, but in totality I've been in Germany for 6 months almost. And it definitely slowed down. Like, I don't understand it. Don't get me wrong, but it
doesn't sound crazy.
It doesn't sound crazy anymore. Because I remember I first encountered that when I went to Slovakia, where it did sound like fucking alien to me. And then I remember on our way back from Slovakia on a train, like the PA came over and it was in German. I was so relieved because it was such a rough day of because no one knew English in Slovakia, so we had to try to use a couple basic German words to tell them where we wanted to go or what we needed, So I remember hearing that, and that's when it first hit me. I'm like, oh, this is kind of more comfortable for me now, where I'm like, I don't know every word, but there's sometimes I can actually hear the vowels or hear the enunciation a little better. Right. So
you can actually pick apart different syllables and understanding which syllable was a part of which word.
So I'm trying to do that. It's a
big thing with Japanese. There'll be words that'll they're 2.5 syllables because it's that exhale at the end where you it's just here's my thing on language, right? They've done experiments where they're really cruel experiments. They're not humane or ethical. Where someone grows up, no contact with anyone, and speaks no language, and they're dumber than shit. They're so dumb. They do not understand how to function as a living thing. We need touch and we need language, right? But also the human brain, maybe I'm weird and wrong, processes its thoughts and your ideas within the language that you know, right?
Yeah.
And I know we took like French in high school, right? And that's a very similar language to English, but like certain things like adjectives and nouns might be swapped in sentences, which means if you're thinking to yourself, the order of elements in your thought are slightly out of pace, or slightly in a different place than what they'd be in English. Japanese is, to my understanding, as someone that does not speak it at all, but has played enough Japanese video games to know, and to not watch enough anime to know that like that's a completely different organization structure. And so like how one person thinks in that language, like that just affects your brain, like you just operate a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean that's why I've always struggled with like languages. Like I can kind of read very elementary school French at this point. I probably would still look it up at the end of the day to be confident in it, but
yeah,
I remember that's why I always struggled with like languages, no matter how much I studied, because for me, I'm bad at math, and how my brain operates math is in my like trying to visualize patterns. Like I know 4 + 4 = 8 because I've memorized that as a pattern rather than as like, you know what I mean? And like for languages, I'm always like, okay, I have to remember cat equals how whatever it is in French, chat, chat. I remember how it's written. And that's why I remember. That's why I can read it better than speak it. Is because I'm a visual learner like that.
Yeah,
so like,
yeah. Same way. Yeah, because we took 5 years of French, right? 4 years of French. I think 5 years of French.
I did
7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th.
I did it to 11th grade.
Same. We were in the same class.
So 6. So we did 2. I just said I was bad at math.
2 + 3 is 5. Yeah. I don't remember a look at that. I cheated in that class all the time. Proud of that. I wanted to be, I got a B. Perfect. Ni no Kuni, Netflix.
Another World.
Yes. Yeah, you taught me that for the same time, and I thought
I only learned that
like
because
name,
of
like,
watching it in Japanese. I'm like, they kept saying it, and they're like, and it just said Another World twice, and I'm like, does this mean Another World?
That's honestly like,
it makes sense though. It's kind of cool.
Another World sounds like a lame thing to call a video game. You know what I mean? I get like Dragon Quest
English,
and Final Fantasy.
Like I guess for me it sounds like I said, it sounded like I thought it was like a kingdom name or something, like welcome to Ni no Kuni.
Just a fun thing to say. It sounds like a fun thing to say. Anyway, the movie is about full name Yusuke, and Haru. They are childhood best friends. They go to the same high school. Haru is on the basketball team. Lots of girls like him. Haru has a
one of the
girlfriend
best in the league too. Cause
probably
he's getting so many boards, but
yeah. Haru has a girlfriend. I forgot her name. Maybe I have it written down.
It's Kotana, Kotona. Kotana.
I don't think it's pronounced that way, but yes,
something like I don't
something
remember.
Like that. Anyway, she's
maybe?
friends. She's friends with the both of them. We get this weird thing that like Yu wishes she was his girlfriend, and there's that because like Yu's. I mean,
there's clearly a like love triangle thing. There's even one part where he's like back at his house laying down and like he's visualizing, and they even do like a visual love triangle kind of thing where he's right behind them as they're talking, and it's like literally a visual triangle. I thought that was really like good job of kind of. Instead of just showing them, they did like a visual thing of it. Yeah, you know? My English teacher would be proud. He always talked about triangles in movies obsessively. It was fantastic.
Yeah. As they're walking home from school, using a wheelchair, so he's behind them. And like she's, at first I thought that Kotane was talking about a grape store. She's talking about crepes. It was crepes. I was reading. I didn't see any text, no subtitles, because I was dubbed. So I was like, oh, orange flavored grapes. It's odd. Crepes, duh. Okay. But like, they have to go up a flight of stairs, and then they pause and use like, that's okay. I'll go home. Like, one of two things could happen. Either they can come and bring you something, or
just wait there. Yeah.
You go around. Like, that's not the only way up.
Well, to be fair, while he's daydreaming or whatever, and he's kind of having like anxiety about it, obviously, And then it cuts to them too being like, hey, next time we should just take the long way so he can come too. And I thought that was so funny to me.
Why did you say that then?
Yeah, I know at first, but then the second thing was like, wow, that just like for me is like exactly how my anxiety is all the time, where I'm like, oh my god, these people are probably saying this about me or like think this way about me. And then like it just flashes in reality they're like, man, I wish Devin was here or whatever, something to that effect. It's just so funny. Like it was more of a joke than it probably meant to be, or wasn't really a joke, but like for me it became funny because I'm like, wow, he's just like me for real. We're just like in reality, none of that shit's happening. It's all in my own head. But yeah, they should just. It looked like there was a road, by the way, that went like left. Couldn't they just like push him up the hill, like off the mountain with that? Like I don't.
It was.
There's a lot of stairs, by the way, in this movie. I don't know if you noticed, like a lot of like over the top, like long stair. Like there's one part in the Gladiator arena where like they have to climb up, and I'm like, bro, they're making them. They just fought like 10 dudes with swords. They're it looks like a hot day, and now they have to climb up like also 500 flights of stairs.
There's a lot of spectators there to watch 5 minutes of fake play combat. They pointed out that they're not real swords.
That's like watching, then, like, going to an NFL game and then they come out when they play flag football for 5 minutes. I'd be so disappointed.
Right, and then, but then like the two people then walk up the stairs to have a quiet conversation with the king and all that. And all these people are just standing there and be like, when do we see the lion? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Or is it like halftime? Do they go get drinks or something? I don't know. Bathroom break.
Anyway, Yu gets a call from Kotone. I forget how they pronounce her name.
I think it was like Kotana or something like that. I think it's
maybe something. Girl. That sounds really productive. She's being chased by a obviously scary man who exudes purple mist stuff. Gee, can you believe that I called that the one dude who wears purple was connected to the bad guys?
Oh, I mean,
was the bad guy?
I mean, of course,
purple, and he's also like the visor to. He's Jafar. You know what I mean? He's like literally Jafar, from Aladdin. But and then like she gets her ass stabbed. Like with
that was pretty brutal. That's when I was like, "What the fuck is this dagger? Movie?" Like I was like, "What is?" And I remember asking Bryn, and she's like, "Oh yeah, the game's pretty dark." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Yeah. The game's. I look at the cover, and I'm like, "It's a fun, goofy fantasy game."
Did she tell you that the PS3 game was about like a kid's mom dies?
Yeah. Because I asked her afterwards. I'm like, "Oh, was this anything like the plot?" She's like, "Kinda, but not really. But in terms of like how it works, yes." But I was like. Yeah, because she gets stabbed, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck? I thought this was the kids thing. I'm like, what is this?
That's the thing, is it is.
And then they try to bring her to the ambulance, or he's running with them. Because they're both there, but then they get caught in the road and get. At that point, I'm like, they died. That's how they get here. Is it that? I'm like, is the ending gonna be like, oh, you're in heaven actually?
Yeah.
Like I thought that was what the ending was. I was like, this game is sad, dude.
Did she think that the old man was the little boy from
she didn't say it all the time.
Ask her. That's my theory, because he's wearing like what the kid wears on the box art and like his outfit as he runs around.
I'm assuming they wouldn't. I don't think do that on accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Then they pop up in the world of Ni no Kuni, and there's cat people, there's wolf people, there's pole dancing bat ladies.
I thought I saw that. That was
she was going at it for a long time. Also,
she had
they let some kid run up and just help.
Yeah,
like buddy, you're young, but you have a girlfriend. You probably know why the dynamic between what she's doing up there and all the men at the table are down there. I don't think the pole is there to have fun, like it's a playground.
But then no one ever like does anything about it. Like it's just. Different world. Hey, another world, different. Jesus.
He comes up. He's like, I've discovered a new career.
Yeah,
I know what I want to be now. A pole dancer. Yeah. It's great. It's a great workout. I'm told. You have to hang yourself up there for a while.
It's not an easy thing to do. No, it's definitely a skilled thing you'd have to practice and have good upper body strength to do.
Yeah, which I do.
But also the dog there, like he was supposed to be all cool, but like Yo, he was kind of rapey. I'm not gonna the way he was talking about a 17-year-old.
But yeah, well, again, we have to remember,
I know,
even though we disagree with the age of consent, and it's very cultural to
you're right,
to find publicly.
He just like as soon as they say like
high school girls are attractive, it's weird.
They're like as soon as they're like he's like 17, ripe for the picking. I'm like, stop, dog man, chill.
Hey, he's drunk, and he turns out to be an A-OK guy later.
He comes back for like one scene and fights, and then he kind of just disappears.
He was in like the background for a few things as like a part of a group.
I just assumed he died.
No, he didn't die. No one died in this movie. No one died in this movie.
They were all using fake swords.
I thought
they were still using the practice swords.
Well, even when it comes to like the big, we'll talk about the battles. Oh my god! But they're just like hitting sword on armor, and they're just lying there. But like,
it's honestly like how that's how
none of you died.
It's like old movies, you know what I mean? Like like old movies back in the day, if they made like a medieval film or something like that.
Especially like rotoscope animation from back in the 80s too.
Do the fake thing where it goes through your armpit. Oh. Or you get hit once and you're supposed to just fly because it looked like it cut through you or whatever.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
But I get it. Obviously, it's again, like the game, I'm pretty sure the game's rated E. Like, you know, the concepts of I mean, on Netflix, it
said it was rated TV-14 for fear.
Fear. I mean, yeah, there was a spider in the movie. Great.
I just thought that was funny.
Spider,
like, not fantasy
spider,
violence,
by the way.
or...
I want a Tony Hawk game where you're a spider. Because, you know, it just hooks on. I mean, I guess Spider-Man could do that too, but, you know, like, that spider was grinding it out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, so they're looking for their friend, and we jump through some quick leaps to be like, it sounds like you're talking exactly like the princess. And they're like, oh my god, it's her. So then they go in, we get that townsperson A and B joke, which I found funny. I actually laughed at that.
Mm-hmm.
We do the whole sneak into a cart, you know. I'm surprised that they weren't found out in the bedroom. They just hid behind a pillar, and they were fine.
I wonder how often that's worked in real life, like during that time period, like during like the 1300s. Like how often were people sneaking into like kingdoms doing the classic hiding in a barrel?
Often. Because here's the thing. Like, I bet it was often. I mean, we watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie separately. We didn't see it together, and there is a more step-by-step basis on how they get that idea to work, which I appreciated. And this one is just like, yeah, we're on. But like, this movie was like an hour and 40 minutes or something like that, so we needed to step on through. So, you know, fine, I guess.
Yeah. Every time I see it in these movies, I'm always thinking, I'm like, I wonder if that was just a Hollywood made-up thing at one point, and then everyone's been stealing it from it since.
I can see it being an embellishment.
Or it's something that, an embellishment of something that has been occurring for centuries of people in medieval Europe being like, listen, I need to get in those castle walls one way or another, or I'm going to jump in the lion's den. They have a security checkpoint
with an X-ray machine. They scan, like, oh shit.
Yeah. They jump in the back of like where there's like a lion in a cage or something. That's always, and then that's the classic comedic thing, right?
Yeah.
Shit, didn't mean to jump in this one.
Anyway, we basically sneak on through. The princess has a smoky smoke piling out of the same spot where our friend was stabbed, and we get flashes of a knife or a large dagger thing being there. Anyway, yeah, so there's these three mystic men from like a different kingdom or something. They've come to do something, and then they die, but like with their song, I had to turn on the volume because I'm like, this is a little cheesy to hear. Again, sometimes the really really embarrassing things in these animes are easier to stomach when they're spoken in a language you don't understand. So I was watching this in English, and their song, I had to like lower that volume down because I'm like, don't want people to hear this. But then they die, so it's okay. By the way, when we go back to the real world and we get that news story about three men dying, and they quickly jump to realizing they look like those guys, I'm like, how? One of them looked like a Kappa, like the green spirit turtle guy.
It was them, though. Come on.
Like, okay.
Also question: blood on your
Does
hands.
the whether
it was
counterpart?
on fault. What's that?
Does the dog man have a counterpart? Do the cat
or are they
people
just
have
a dog?
counterparts?
Are they just a dog?
Right?
Because that'd be
Do
great.
they have souls?
Do they have souls?
You know?
I guess there's no blood on their hands because they didn't know, and like they. So wait, when they die in that world too, let's say, because now I have questions. This is what happens when you actually start thinking about it too much.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like they killed somebody. They didn't kill them, right? They just died in their world. So when people die in our world, is it because they're dying in the fantasy world too? Is that the idea that I'm taking? Like that logic, right? Applies to everybody?
I think it's worse. I think you have two separate worlds with their own similar logics going on, right? One of them has magic, the other has high Fanun technology. Well, modern day technology, but compared to them, high Fanun. Fanun's not a word. It should be a word. It sounds like a fun word.
I understood.
I feel like they are two separate things, but everyone's linked to a counterpart in the other world. If anything happens to either one of you, the counterpart gets fucked too. Which sounds awful. Like, is this movie trying to tell us that cancer comes from significant magical stress in the other world?
Yeah, that's
and vice
scary
versa.
To think about.
Like, is that why we can't cure cancer? Because magic exists elsewhere? You know? Crazy. They die. You pulls the knife out of the chest of Princess. Oh, what was her name? It starts with an A.
Astrid.
The princess. Then
Astrid.
Astrid. I can't really say Annabelle. Princess Astrid. Then captain of the guard runs in and hey, she looks like Yu's adoptive sister type mother figure. Not really sure what her Miss Saki. Yeah. Which Miss Saki was so brief that I didn't recognize that.
They kept writing sis like SIS Saki. So I mean, if they meant like short for sister or something, I don't know. So, but yes, same person or whatever.
Yeah. And then like everyone's like, "Oh, you arrest them." No, they saved them. And then they're like, "All right, here's a bunch of money. Goodbye." And I'm sitting there being like, "You guys know something's up. You're from a different world. Start a conversation, damn it. Don't just be like, "Okay, thank you." Like I get it. Haru's like, "Well, Katone or whatever her name was. We found you." And she's like, "Huh? Oh, you mean I look like an acquaintance of yours? Oh, I would love to meet her one day." And then he's just like confused, like, say something. Like, we're from another world. Our friend was stabbed by a dagger, and then we ended up here. And she looks like you, and you were stabbed by a dagger. They explain it
much later, yeah.
But they should have said it then. Like, I don't know.
Bro, you've never even been to another world, okay? So shut up.
Often on these types of movie review episodes, we like to talk about the fact that I think both of us agree on this. Like, you can nitpick a movie, you can talk about plot holes, but like, if the plot hole is in the service of the story that's being told, then story is different than plot. If it's being in service of the story, it's fine. It's excusable. In fact, you know what? Thank you for not wasting our time by going through greater length to explain why you're able to do what you're doing with the logic of the movie. I'm fine with that. But it really does grind my gears in lots of movies where no one talks to each other and just explains like, listen, this is going to sound really weird, but our friend who looks like you was stabbed with a knife, and that's why we came here, because you look like her, and guess what? You had a knife stabbed her, and that's how I knew to pull it out of you. Like, just talk, and then you get the ball rolling there. Instead, you and Haru go back to the tavern, the pub. They get a nice, giant, like, turkey, and what I thought was beer, but clearly not beer, because they drank it.
Well, that was a reward. They got a reward.
The Wolfman and his friends paid for the dinner. And then the next morning, Haru's eating a sausage, and she's like, "Oh, our reward came."
Yeah, because they got the reward, and I think it was a bunch of money, like the 2 sacks of money.
It was just 2 sacks, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Haru's a little jealous that he couldn't pull the dagger out, but how was you able to?
Because we find out later that he's Yue's from this world, and that's why.
I would love, by the way, just talking about that ending, where Haru basically, I look at it more of like his psyche, who, I'm not talking cosmic horror, but like he's had his grasp on the universe crumble out of his grip, and like he has comes with the idea of magic in other places, and like, his girlfriend got cancer because of something that happened. I look at like that explanation of him being like, how does he reframe his mind into something that doesn't crumble into pudding? And I would laugh if like he's not wrong, because that's what the story wants us to know, to take away from it, is that he's right. But it'd be funny if he was wrong. Like, no, he lived here. And he's gone. Your friend. Like,
I thought when it was
just come to a way to make yourself feel good.
What I thought was going to happen was it was going to be he wakes up and realizes that like, Yui like gave, I don't know, like an organ donation or something like that, and then he passed giving an organ donation to, now I'm mispronouncing her. I feel like we are mispronouncing her name.
The
Cortana,
girlfriend,
whatever. The girlriend there. Like I thought that's what it sounds like.
You almost said Cortana. That would be a more interesting movie. Master Chief and Halo. I almost called her Halo.
Or Katana from Mortal Kombat. That's what I thought it was gonna be, but I kind of like that it was just like, oh yeah, he just never existed, which is funny because then his caretaker there,
she forgets about him.
Yeah, but like then I'm just like, what? How does that change for why she knows him in the first place?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, because that was the only reason that she knows him.
Also, like, is she gonna go back to her floral shop and be like, why do I have like a handicap accessible bedroom? Like,
I'm assuming it just disappears. Whatever.
That's crazy. Does Yusuke not feel any like regret on leaving like loved ones behind? I get it. Like, you didn't have many, but like,
they try to make it clear that he's been alone most of his life, and he was kind of like, yeah. Besides her, that was it. So, but yeah, maybe he should have said something to her because she never would know. I guess now she doesn't know, so I guess there's no pain in that. I guess
it doesn't matter, but like,
there is an ethical question there. There's an ethical conundrum for sure of like, is it fucked up to like delete someone's memory of a person that was an important part of their life?
Right. I mean, yeah. Think about this. Besides, like the personal connection that she had with Yusuke, whatever it was, I'm assuming it was positive. But even if it was negative, besides that, she spent money on him. And it's just gone. She could have had 2 floral shops. You know what I mean?
She could have hired some low wage workers and really expanded her business.
There was some little girl that I think worked there. Like,
yeah. But yeah, no, there's an ethical conundrum there that I have of like, is it ethical to delete someone's memory?
Well, it wasn't on purpose.
I know, but like, I'm like, is it? But like, I don't know.
It's the way to make us feel better about things.
I would say something. Like, I would say something, I think. Be like, listen, you're not going to believe me, but at one point we had a third wheel, basically. Aww. And not, so I don't mean it like that, but you know what I mean? We had a friend who existed that you don't know about. And it was crazy. Like, and then we saved you from cancer, and you'd be like, what?
Also, Yusuke and Haru don't look alike. Crazy, but all of the other identical versions that were introduced in this movie look exactly the same, besides hair length and shit like that. So that really did feel like they just wanted to have a twist. But, fine. I appreciated it because there was some sentiment behind it. What was I going to say? I was going to say something, and I forgot. But, yeah. I will say this. Because, like, instead of maybe recapping the whole thing beat for beat, essentially we're kind of tugged back and forth between the castle and not the castle, and we saved her, but that means now girlfriend has cancer, we think, but is it really that, or is it because of the magical hold that's being held on her in the other world, that type of stuff. I'll just talk about like my enjoyment of the movie and my thoughts on the movie overall. I think so when a movie first started, it was like the real world basketball stuff, and like, okay, interesting. Okay, sure, let's get it going. But then like the first like act of the movie, I really liked. I liked Yusuke and Astrid, that's her name. I liked their dynamic. I actually felt like genuine with the time constraints that they had. This is what I wanted to say. We're often talking about how appreciative we are that whatever movie we're watching is a sweet 90 minutes, roughly. We love the short movies. I actually wish this movie was longer, because there's more that they could have fleshed out to make it not feel like it's going by too fast. That's my thing. It doesn't need to be an extra half an hour. You could add 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, maybe 3 times in total. I would have been okay with that. But this movie could have been longer. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, I really liked the first act of this movie a lot. And we get into the second act too.
I liked the mystery of like how. I mean, that's always my thing with a lot of these kind of things, where it's like the mystery is always exciting, and then once they tell it to you or figure it out, it's still cool, but it loses that little bit of energy for me. And and it's not.
There's the discovery phase of a new world, of a Ni no Kuni.
Yeah, I mean, just like how like like I said originally, I thought up until they jumped through the fire and fell that like they did die. And like, and then this was like some weird like purgatory thing where they need to complete their quest so that their spirits can move on or something like that. And I thought that was going to be the ending of like, oh, and she lived. Don't worry, like she did go to the hospital or something because you saved
big dagger.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's what I thought was going to happen. So like it played with that expectations, and then I did like kind of the world hopping and learning more about it. But no, I definitely agree. The first act of like learning how the world worked, and I feel like the pace was good. If there was any parts where I wasn't really interested in it, it quickly moved on.
Yeah.
And then the second act with like them having to fight one another, I feel like was too long in my opinion. And weak because no one really won in the end. They kind of just were teleported back, and then and if it wasn't for the assassin, wearing the same clothes, they wouldn't be it wouldn't be as obvious who it was. Because it wasn't until they're back there again that they realize, oh yeah, he is the one behind it all.
Right.
And like I thought that was fine. I did like that he turned into a big demon. I thought that was much cooler than I thought he was just going to be a knight with a big sword, and I'm like, I don't know, I just feel like we've seen so much of that in other video game movies. No fault to this one, but like I think of like Kingsglaive where it was a dude with the big sword. You know what I mean? So I'm just kind of like, oh, can it not be like this movie's going pretty good? Like I don't need a big sword knight. And like when he turned into a demon, I'm like, okay, cool, fine, this is good. And he's kind of anime in look and whatnot, so I dug that. But yeah, I just didn't care too much when they were fighting. That's my thing too.
So on all that fighting stuff, I noticed something odd when I first started the movie. I'm like, man, this Warner Brothers, because they distributed the movie in America, this logo's moving at a higher frame rate than 24. I think it's just 30. I don't think it was 60. And I doubt it was 48.
I don't know, I didn't really
notice. Netflix standards, I doubt it.
It wasn't like Kingsglaive where it felt like it was running at 120 during battle scenes and to a point where it was nauseating.
Well, hold on. My point here. So I saw that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's weird. And like, it feels it's not full frame by frame animation. It's definitely animated on twos for a lot. But then when they first showed the 3-dimensional armadillo-like guys, like these guys are animated at a much higher frame rate. I think it's just 30. Honestly, I don't think it's 60 or anything like that. Because I don't even think Netflix could even support 60 frames a second encoding. I don't think they have a reason to. So I think it's just 30. Because television, live action TV shows are often just 30. Why are they animated? And like there was like frame stuttering when they transitioned from this army of 3D army armadillos. They pan up to a cliff where we have our evil man and then Haru and his knight thing. They're on horses. There's frame stutters there. And I rewound it and played it again. There's frame stutters as they transition. There's like their pipeline and how they made this stuff is very weird. And like I did not appreciate. I didn't like the 3D stuff at all. I get it. It's so much cheaper, though? And you don't need as many people to animate big fight scenes when they do 3D stuff. But they should have been mastered at 24 frames like the rest of the movie. It felt weird.
I just thought they looked goofy and out of place, some of the monsters, but dinosaur things. I did like the ship that they're on though. That looked decent with them on it. I liked
There's
that.
a lot of 3D panning scenes where the environment's 3D.
Yeah.
Totally cool. I'm okay with that. But like it's the 3D character models, especially when like the battle's going on, you have White Knight and Dark Purple Knight swinging their swords at each other, and it just feels so like I'm sure it's not looped animation, but it just feels like don't actually look at this. Just have the colors in your periphery. Don't actually look at this. Like, I don't know. I just figured for like a big. This wasn't like a TV movie type of anime. You know what I mean? And it's based off a relatively popular franchise in Japan by a company that's relatively popular in Japan. I just feel like it was odd to me that it was like that. But my opinions of the movie basically were like not expecting much to like, oh, I actually really like this, to like, okay, this is starting to get weaker. At the end, we introduce like, there's like a couple random points in the movie where like a concept is just brought up out of the blue and then seemingly dropped so that it can be called back to later, like the sword. Like, maybe the sword was from the game because the old man has it, and I'm 90% sure he's the kid from the first game. But
I'm glad they actually brought it back because we've seen stuff similar to this where they mention some lore shit and then they just never talk about it again, and then I get confused later on of like why you brought that up. Because the perfect example of
especially if it's a tie-in movie like this, where this it's not based off a game in particular, it's based off the world.
That's what I was worried about. But at least like as cheesy as it was to bring it back and reference it, I'd rather have that than it just be name dropped and whatnot and then never really brought up. The only example I can think of that can get away with it was Lord of the Rings, where there is so much like lore thrown here and there, but then like it would either come back later or I don't know. They just did such a good job in like Lord of the Rings where they found a way to like find the good balance of like you don't have to know all the names of all the places, all the people.
And some of it's just to make you feel like it's a breathing place with history.
But then there's other like high fantasy movies and whatnot that like try to put in cram so much lore and shit, and to the point where it's like I'm confused. Who is this guy? Why do I have to remember that he's part of this thing? And because you said it one time and now he's part of this family, and it's like I don't know what that means. So at least I'll give it credit. Was it perfect?
These big epic fantasy things and they're real happy about their lore, but they started with lore and not with a story. Like, what's your idea for a story? And make your lore romantically entwined with how that story is, you know?
Right. So at least, like, I don't think it was perfect, don't get me wrong, but I feel like this is a lot better than a lot of, like, these kind of genre of films where, like, it easily could have been, like, oh, yes, I used the sword of blah, blah, blah to stop the blah, blah, blah once. It's like, why are you bringing that up? Why do you bring that up?
It felt a little bit more whimsical and, like, I mean, there's cat people and a dog man. And, like, I like the trope of, like, by the way, this is straight up just an isekai anime, you know, idea of literally being transported to another world. And I'm from the real world, you know, that type of stuff. But I also love the trope of, like, this cute creature just finds you right away and just tags along, even though you don't acknowledge it really. Like, I like that. I don't know.
Kind of reminds me of a video game, too, in that way, where, like, there's always the character or like the pet or something like a chow perhaps or something like that that will tell you the directions of the game and like where you're supposed to go at the very first like hour
in the tutorial level.
So I appreciate it from that respect of like, hey, we should just follow this because that just makes sense in a video game aspect. So and you can get away with it in a video game movie. Could you get away with that maybe in something else? Maybe not, but in this, makes sense.
And it's just a cute thing. I don't even know what it's supposed to be.
That's the one thing about video game movies is like if you're allowed to have the same rules of video games and logic sometimes that you don't get in other genres. So, and sometimes video game movies we've watched are afraid to do that. Yeah. And this was one of the movies where I don't think it was afraid to be like, yep, this is based off a video game. Yeah. So, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Resident Evil movies and Monster Hunter, specifically Paul W.S. Anderson, felt almost embarrassed that his funding came from Capcom, makers of video games, you know what I mean, and how he adapted those. But Yeah, the movie ends when we defeat the bad guy. It's the purple visor to the king. Astrid's like, okay, yeah, his magic was keeping you here. Also, by the way, I had this scene where I had this very important dagger that my mom made out of magic that I thought was going to be used as the final blow or something like that. No. Dope that it was his friend Haru that got the final blow, and that it was sword straight through the top of the head while the mouth was agape.
That was a cool kill.
I appreciated that. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was gonna be through his chest, or he's gonna cut him in half, and like would have been cool, but it wasn't as cool of being like, no, we're gonna be specific about this, going straight through the head and the mouth. Yeah, perfect.
But for whatever reason, Princess Astrid's like, his magic was what was actually allowing you to hop between worlds, and now that he's dead, the magic will dissipate, so if you don't leave now, you'll never get to leave. Which I'm just sitting here thinking, like, how did they pop up in the games then? Clearly there's other ways. I feel like we don't need to rush into this, you know?
Well, they said that there was a wayfarer, or whatever the term is, that like they have the ability to go through, and then at the end it kind of hinted as if he wasn't a wayfarer actually. He accidentally got to the real world. And then he didn't have the power to like switch back and forth. But the main character, I think he is an actual wayfarer, because at any point he can travel. He doesn't need to almost die.
And he chooses to stay back to be with his princess. Honestly, kind of weird in this regard. Let me think of it this way. If you and I, let's say we had a different life, and, you know, the people we know and all that other stuff are different, so it's not weird on how I'm explaining this. And, like, there was two of us, and there was a girl with us, and we both liked the girl. Wouldn't it be weird if it's like, all right, I'm going to go to the fantasy world and be with the version of her that's rich, and you're going to stay here?
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I think he got the better end of the deal,
man,
dude.
You liked my girlfriend, and got, like, no offense, the hotter version with the money.
I mean, just on the
prince with my girlfriend.
If you take just like her even out of it, just like royalty and glory versus like you're just an average guy
who's good at basketball,
who's decent at basketball. Unless he was like, they maybe need to show explicitly that he was like the LeBron James of Japan, and then maybe that would have made it like, okay, he's still like royalty in his world.
He just really liked that girl. He was so devoted. He didn't care where they were.
The negative ending could have been like he got back and she's like, "Oh, I have a new boyfriend now." He donated his pancreas to me, so like I survived cancer.
Yeah. It's dark. It'd be funny if he came back and she did die of cancer.
I thought that for a possibility too. For a second, would be like, oh, it was just him like coping or something. Like that was like, I thought that was supposed to be all in his head. That was just a way of him coping with everything. I'm glad it wasn't. I do generally like this ending, but it is funny to think about. But like, he's like, I'm gonna go back. And he's like, why would he do that? It's like he was in a wheelchair. His friend also is dating the girl that I like. My only friend. And I live in a basically a grocery store or whatever, so it's like, or can I be royalty with a cool prince. Sword and own a kingdom and fight dragons in a fantasy world that seems
especially
pretty
because
chill.
Like this, favorite part in the movie, by the way, my favorite characters in the movie are these little dudes with like the Scottish accents, Irish accents, whatever, I don't know, Wales, some part of that world. Love their accents. Reminds me of Mr. Drippy from the PS3 game Wrath of the White Witch, Kuni Wrath of the White Witch, who just has this very thick like Scottish accent. Love those two little like cat people. But it just dawns on them and like the king that like, we could build a world of peace.
I thought that was funny. It's like that was a little bit of a stretch for me. But
this realistic, when you look at the real world, up until World War I, I would say, and I'm not a history buff, but up until World War I would say being at war seemed more fashionable than obviously
it was weirdly respectable. It was
like
army
cool.
And it was cool to be like, hey, I'm going to World War I.
Because guess what? You weren't
sick.
getting your head blown off by someone 100 miles or 100 meters away. that's hiding. Like, it's different, not the same
at
fighting
worst,
at all.
Like, worst case scenario, it was like you got a cannonball.
Lost a hand.
That, like, or you lost a hand, or like you got stabbed by a bayonet. Like, you were blown to pieces in World War I. But like going into World War I,
your knowledge of it going to happen. But yes, before World War I,
total war,
more fashionable to be at war. Not only that, like, if you were at peace, there's a reason why you were at peace. Your country, like the natural state of a nation.
We weren't colonizing, or
we needed resources. The conquest of other people brings glory and stuff like that. So like, there's a part in the movie where like the king is talking about how they earned their peace, and I'm like, this feels very realistically, fantasy fiction of like, they got it. I mean, like, I've been going through the Game of Thrones book. I get it. It's as mainstream as it can get, where adult fantasy stuff. But like, they're talking about being at peace, and it's like 8 years ago. like it's none of this is is long standing. But like, so I did chuckle when they're like, what if we give peace a chance?
We've been just like breaking down doors and pillaging for years. I never thought about maybe we just didn't do that. What if we just like traded for resources? Wouldn't that be something?
I mean, the kingdom seems to have no issues.
Not that they had like no reason to like expand. It seems, I feel like they're pretty set. Even like all the peasantry and seems pretty like happy. So like, just like chill.
Even your local townspersons A and B can become mighty heroes if they sneak in and break the laws. You know what I mean?
If you just grind enough, you too can be a prince one day.
Do we have anything else we want to talk about, or are we going to go into explaining our ranking system here on the Sonic Movie Show?
I think I'm good. Yeah, I mean,
all right.
Yeah, I think we covered mostly everything.
We talked a lot about the movie. Now it's time to rank it into a tier. So here on the Sonic Movie Show, we have a myriad of different tiers, letter grades, so to speak. S through F. Obviously, A, B, C, D, E, F, with S being like a superstar up top, special even. We talk about this every single time we do one of these video game movie reviews, explaining what these are. So I'll try to sprint through them. I recommend you watch some of the other ones here on YouTube, where you get to see the graphics above our heads explaining what's going on here.
Or if you want the full experience, you can watch our movie draft, which is what this movie is part
episode
of.
153.
And we did rank all our old ones that we watched up until that point as well. I think it's where we really dove into it.
So to reiterate for folks once more, S rank are films that are, as far as video game movies are concerned, as good as they're going to get. They are, I wouldn't say they necessarily qualifies as a perfect film, but they are films that are enjoyable, extremely entertaining. They have a little bit of that special sauce in them that makes them feel either directly like the video game in ways that are surprising, or they have the spirit of them while also being an entertaining film. So we have Detective Pikachu, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on there as our 3 S rank films. We really do think that they are the best of the video game movies that we have seen so far. A rank are films that are like S rank, but they're just missing something that makes them ultra classics. These are just classics, but these are highly entertaining films, like the 2021 film Mortal Kombat, as well as the 90s Street Fighter, the 90s Super Mario Brothers, and the modern Mario Brothers, as well as Sonic 1 and the Uncharted movie, and Rampage. I lost that. I wanted that lower. Rampage, we, as the Sonic Movie Show, gave that an A rank because, guess what? It's a lot of fun. And as far as grading on a curve goes, because that's what you have to do for video game movies, this is pretty damn good. The B rank films are enjoyable. They have more in them than more good in them than negative. We think that what they're doing is they have something going on that are like, yeah, this is great.
Solid, usually.
Solid. Generally. This is where our first Mortal Kombat, first Resident Evil, first Silent Hill, our Dead or Alive film is in there because that was a surprise to us. We were like, yeah, these are solid films. I would like to see more. Granted, all of the sequels to those first films in there have lower ranks than B, so maybe we didn't need to see more. But,
they tapped out at the very first one.
And the C rank are the average film. We could go either way with them, but guess what? There's good and there's the not so good. We're talking Advent Children, Final Fantasy VII, with its good fight scenes but drab color palette and story. We're talking the Lara Croft Tomb Raider movie starring Angelina Jolie, which are somewhat enjoyable, but like, what the hell is the story about? We're talking most of the Resident Evil films on there, as well as the Street Fighter 2 animated movie, which a lot of people, I feel like, would disagree with us and say that's an S rank, but maybe that's something to rewatch at some point in the future. I enjoyed it, but there was some issues with it. But there was enough good in there as well. Next, we have the D rank. These are quantified by one word. Devin, do you know what this word is?
Donkey.
I was going to say boring. But yes, they're a little bit ass as well. Assassin's Creed, Ass Creed, is a very boring film. It has an identity,
it
but
has
it
a
doesn't
budget.
do anything with it. It has a budget. The Doom movie. Wow. Boring. The Hitman movie. We watched that. Spirits Within, Final Fantasy. Wow.
That was the first real wow movie that we watched.
These are boring films. Warcraft. Beautiful animation. What was going on in it? That type of stuff.
Don't remember.
The E-rank films. It's just the humans and the orcs at war, but then there's a good orc.
There's a wizard? I don't remember.
There's a wizard, but I think he was bad.
I don't remember.
I think he was bad. Or he was betrayed. So there was a twist involving that man. E-rank films are bad. We're talking the King of Fighters that does not understand its source material. Mortal Kombat Annihilation that decided to be stupid. Monster Hunter.
I think that added to that is it's not just bad, it's also not even enjoyable, because there's some bad movies that made it up to almost the A rank that we've watched. But yeah, it's just not even enjoyable. It all depends on
if it feels like it has a good relationship with its source material.
If I'm checking my phone frequently,
if it's fun
to check the clock of how much longer this film is, it usually winds up in the D or the E section. Yeah.
For us, there's way more in there that we are not fans of than there are that we could enjoy. That's what E is all about. E for Ethan, not enjoyable. And the F rank is just, honestly, the offensive movies. And we don't mean that as SJWs or anything like that, but come on, man, that Postal movie, get a grip. It gets its own thing. These are movies that we would not recommend to anyone at all unless they're film buffs that want to watch everything.
Even then, I'll be like, no, don't even... No, just don't.
Yeah.
Not worth
now, for this season of the Sonic Movie Show, we're going through a total of 12 video game movies, and we've done 8 so far. We've done the 2018 film Tomb Raider, gave it an A. We did the Resident Evil Degeneration film, the first of the animated ones, gave it a C. Tekken Blood Vengeance, we gave that a C. Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge, gave that a B. Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15, gave that a D. Ratchet & Clank 2016, also a D. Persona 3, the movie, number 2, Midsummer Night's Dream, gave that a C. And Dead Space Downfall, we gave that a B. Now, as you can see here on YouTube, hope you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, please check us out at Sonic Movie Show, youtube.com/@SonicMovieShow. If you search us, we might not pop up right away, which sucks. So please search us correctly, find us, please. You'll have a visual here. It helps you figure out. You'll see that these movies are listed in 2 different columns. There's an Ethan Picks column and a Devin Picks column. I pick some movies, he picks some movies. We're doing a little bit of a competition here. These tiers, which we agree on after ranking and reviewing the movie, gets a point score tied to them. There is a point total at the bottom. Currently, Devin leads with less than 1 point. There is a decimal. We'll explain how that works in a bit. But yeah, on the right-hand side here, you can easily see S gets you 6 points, A gets you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, F gets you 0. Simple as. There's a counter picks thing, which we will talk about next episode more in detail. But essentially, we are going to give this movie a tier ranking, and then it'll get me some points. Hopefully. Hopefully we don't think it's an F. So, I think
I hope none of our... like you said, it's a competition, but at the end of the day, I actually hope that we just watch a bunch of great movies, and this is just to add some more fun to it. I'd rather we all have A's and B films than some of the last couple we've had where they're C's or D's. So
if we were really competing, we would have a third-party person come in here so we would have this be arranged differently. We're trying to agree with each other. We're being very
it's a friendly competition.
There's a give and take. You know what I mean? That being said, I'm gonna kick his ass. I'm gonna go first because this is my movie pick. Like I mentioned before, I was up a good amount and then down a good amount and then back up again. I feel like with everything I've explained on this movie, I don't think it's boring. I think there was some enjoyable stuff in here. I think as far as theming goes, you know, be yourself, that type of stuff. I don't know. There wasn't really that big, strong of an identity. It's more of just like how people relate to each other is really the relationships type of thing is more of the messaging that they're trying to go with, which was nice and cute. I don't think this movie was incredible. And I think, you know, quality-wise on animation stuff really did drag it down for me because for a good amount, this was a great animated movie, in my opinion. But those 3D elements, those CGI elements, not like a stereoscopic 3D, but like the 3D models really did take me out of it. I like tried not to rewind too often just to really stare, but like I did. It took me out of it, but the rest of the movie was enjoyable and a lot of fun. I personally would give this movie a B tier. What about you, Devin? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I had a good time watching this. I feel like this is one of the better ones that we've watched in our movies we've watched for this season thus far. I generally liked all the characters. It was a little cheesy. My main, I guess, issue with it is like, I'm like, man, is this supposed to be for kids or for young adults? Is it for me? I don't know, because it's pretty dark at moments and sad. But sometimes I try to tell myself, well, maybe I kind of agree sometimes that like talking about like death and like cancer and whatnot maybe is important to talk about to kids and younger audiences sometimes, and in a way that isn't just their parents telling them all the time. You know, I think it is important for cartoons to maybe and younger, like these kind of things, talk to kids about it in a way that they'll understand it more. Granted, I don't know if it really works that way, because when, for example, she says, "Oh yeah, I have cancer," it's kind of abrupt, and it isn't a way of, I feel like maybe a kid would understand unless they knew what cancer was going in. So I don't know if it really hits on that, but I personally like the animation. I didn't notice much of the stuff that you noticed, but maybe it's because I was reading subtitles maybe more. I don't know if that was
that's
part
right.
of
You
it.
were staring at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah. No, but I generally liked it.
Also, real quick, to go back to the subtitles thing, Netflix had the option of English with subtitles as well, and those subtitles didn't match up with what the English voice acting was, so I had to turn those off.
Maybe they just pulled from the Japanese.
Like, I wonder if it's the Japanese subtitles, but it was translated a little bit differently for the dub. I don't know. Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. But I think overall I was entertained through 95% of it. There was a couple parts where I'm like, okay, that's fine, but they quickly moved on. But I also agree, maybe it could have been like 5 to 10 more minutes longer to expand on some things. But at the same time, I'm never going to complain about it being short, because we've watched some 2.5 hour movies.
I'd rather
where I'm
it
like,
be too short than too long.
Yeah, I'm like, when is this going to end? So yeah, going in, like I was honestly like, just comparing to everything else we've watched and what we've watched thus far, I was actually higher up on this film than you were. I was actually like in the A tier, because I'm just thinking about like, I'm comparing this to like Persona. I like this way more than Persona. I think I was more down on Persona than you were. I found this way more entertaining. I found this way more entertaining than Advent Children, Kingsglaive.
Yeah. I wanted to like Kingsglaive, man. I couldn't in good conscience give that more than a B, though.
Yeah. Way better than Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
Both visually and just story-wise. Yeah, I was just entertained. Like I said, 95% of the time, I really have no huge qualms with it outside of just like some of the parts were just a little goofy, but like I'd rather have that than like you have an Assassin's Creed scenario where they're trying to do some deep intellectual question on you, and then you come away being like, what did I have to learn from this?
What was the question?
Yeah. So I don't know. I at one point I was even thinking S. Like the first half of the movie, I'm like, so far I'm at S.
Yeah.
But then I agree with like having them fight. I kind of just didn't care for that as much, and it went on a little bit too long, and then it wound up being resolved in a way that didn't feel satisfying, and that's like probably the
they
biggest
didn't actually
issue.
confront each other and come to a conclusion. They got conveniently disposed from that world.
Yeah, so that's my biggest issue, I guess, with that, and maybe that's what kind of brings me down more to an A, that it wasn't. If it kept going with the mystery and maybe just didn't do the division, I feel like it could have been S. It didn't have that extra sauce like you were talking about earlier. It's still a great cheeseburger, though. You know what I mean? It just didn't have the bacon on it. You know what I mean? So, like, it's still a good cheeseburger for me.
Yeah.
But all things you're saying, too, I feel like it kind of also... I can see why it could be a B as well, but I don't know.
My main thing of why I won't say A... I would love it for it to be an A film, obviously, because it's my movie, but my pick. It's not. I didn't make the movie. The reason why I can't go higher than a B is because overall the story just feels like we make lots of leaps for the sake of time. Then they don't really feel like they're earned a lot of. Like, there's a lot of slower build with Yusuke and Astrid, where, like, I really do buy that. I feel like these are two genuine people. Would I like if he shared a bit more about himself instead of talking about her a lot? Like, hey, when they're going swimming together, I would have loved a scene where, like, it's supposed to be sometime later and they're floating on the water and he says, you know, this is the first time I've ever swum because I'm in a wheelchair in my world. Like, more of those scenes would have endeared me even more to the characters.
That's fair.
Stuff like that.
That's
that kind of goes
There was a lot of leaps.
Why don't they talk about, like, I don't want to say meta-contextually, but talk about what's going on. You know what I mean? But that, like, there's just this other kingdom which we don't see anything about besides the people are bad and they're there to beat them up. That type of stuff. Like, I can't go above a B. There are issues I have with this movie, but there is a lot to like. And, like, yeah, like you're saying, that leading into that movie and we're seeing this world.
The first half is, to me, is S tier.
I thought it was really, really good.
But even yeah, just the second half is a CB for me.
I wasn't expecting them to save the princess that early and just not have any issues with getting to that. They go in, they sneak, they're hiding, they leave, they pull the dagger out, she's saved. They're forgiven for trespassing. They're rewarded. Like, I wasn't expecting that at all. I thought that was going to be the whole plot of the story.
And I'm kind of glad it wasn't, though, because it was going to be, I feel like, for me, then, like, a Sleeping Beauty kind of story where it's like, we need to get her out of her slumber, get her out of her curse by doing... I thought they were going to be like, okay, now we have to go fight the dragon or something like that. We have to go find the key to do this.
It takes place in that kingdom the whole time.
Yeah. So I think that, to me, that's like a good thing. It felt it played against my expectations in that regard. But I mean, I'm not gonna fight you obviously on on it, but like I said, I think for at least the first half of this film for me is S, and then second half either a B or C.
Yeah, I would love to go A, but if it was your movie, and not mine, I would definitely not say A. I don't think I would I don't know why I phrased it like that. My point is that, like, I would love it for it to be high for point value, but, like, there are better movies in that A tier than this one, in my opinion. So
that's fair. It's so hard to compare them to over time.
Yeah, and that's why we're not actually ranking them all. We're just flopping them into tiers. And, if you guys look at, if you scroll back and to when we showed the other movies that aren't from the season, they're just listed alphabetically within those tiers. There isn't a better versions inside those. There's
been times where like I'm like watching this too. I was like, man, I wish I fought more on, like, I didn't like Persona as much now. Like, watching this, I'm like, Persona should have been lower down for me. Like, and the more I think about it, but that's how these ranking things go. That's what I like about it. It's like, the curve does change over time, and maybe one day we'll revisit these and be like, oh, we were right, we were wrong. So
that'd be fun to do in season 18 of the Sonic Movie Show.
when we're 45 years old.
Well,
I wouldn't be far off. 18,
wouldn't be close. We're on season
3,
4. We're on season 4. So 14 more years from now. Oh, I hope we're not doing this show still then. Any case, hey, I got 4 points from that, but that's not all. There is a decimal to be earned.
There is.
Now, how do we do this decimal, Devin? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so we go on RottenTomatoes.com, everyone's favorite site to grade movies.
I love it, except for the last movie I had.
Where there was no audience score, which is what we use. So basically, let's say the audience score is a 70, you get a decimal of 0.70 added. This is a way to add later on so we don't have since we're just doing flat numbers, there's actually a decent chance we'd have a tie. So to just make it more fun, we added that as a decimal. Yeah. And also we're like, well, sometimes we've rated movies and it has a great audience score or a bad audience score, and we kind of were putting that stock into it when we were drafting these movies. It's like, well, maybe fans will really like the Persona movie or the Tomb Raider movie, and that'll give us more points. And maybe
it's also a good way
one
to
of us
see
will
our
win.
Pulse, like get a finger on the pulse of like what people actually
that
thought
as
of
well.
This movie.
Yeah, and then like over time, like maybe one of us will win by just getting a lot of high audience scored films, and I think that'd be kind of funny. So. But yeah, you ready? I already have it up here. So.
Well, I wanted to say like the only film on this list so far that does not have an audience score at all, or even a critics one, was the Persona 3 number 2. So like you took the lead because I didn't get any decimal points from that. But yes, I am ready. What is the audience score for Ni no Kuni?
So it is a 43.
Really?
Yeah. I thought it was going to be higher. I thought it was going to be in like the 60 range. Usually for these kind of movies, I feel like anytime we've ranked it in that A or B tier, it's usually been like in the 60 range.
Wow. Well, that brings the total score that I have to 19.10. So 19.10. I know it says 19.1. That's just Excel.
And what do I have? It's
you're at 15.26. So I got 4.40.
So in 2 though, you'll have your final score too, because so that'll be interesting. It'll make Corpse Party will have the pressure on it to succeed, which it could be. After Angry Birds, I have no idea. Like those last 2 are straight crapshoots. I mean, this was part of your crapshoot. Going in, I had, I don't know, kind of low expectations. I'm like, we'll see how good this is. But then once I saw it was on Netflix, I'm like, okay, at probably worst, this will be a D, maybe a C. So. I feel like you made a good choice with this pick for sure.
If anything, I think I had it lower on my thing because, like, in hindsight, I'm like, why did I have this lower than Persona 3? But
I think once we finish,
it's because I didn't know this movie existed and I never heard anyone talk about it. And as far as 2019 goes, that was Detective Pikachu, baby. A lot of people were talking about video game movies. There was a Sonic one, the trailers. Yeah. I didn't see anyone talk about this Ni no Kuni movie, so I'm like, it must not have been that good. No, we were wrong.
Right.
It was pretty good.
Once we finish this game, and we should look at the draft and see what would the best board have been. Just what should have. What order should they have actually gone in? That'd be super easy to do. Where we would just put it would be Tomb Raider
ranked ones. Yeah.
Would be Tomb Raider than this, right?
Well, you have 2 Bs. I have 1 B and an A. So Mortal Kombat, Dead Space, Ni no Kuni are 3 Bs. Okay. Yeah. Resident Evil, I still think Persona 3 are C's, and Kingslave is a D.
Like I said, the first half of this movie, I was like, this is an S movie, and I was like, oh man, I think Ethan's gonna just clinch it right here with this film. I'm like, so we'll see. I still think you won because of Tomb Raider, and I think you just have more consistent. Mine are consistently average, which we'll see if that actually helps me or hurts me in the long run, So I'm hoping, I have to hope that Angry Birds is a surprise. That's why I picked it so low. And then I have to hope Corpse Party is maybe a cool comedy horror film that's actually funny. Yeah. So,
well, I think Angry Birds is going to be very bad. There is a counter picks thing underneath our main movies. I've counterpicked Angry Birds. Devin has counterpicked Oni Chambara, the movie Vortex. I have no idea what that movie's going to be like. The idea is that we think, no, actually, that movie's going to be real bad. And so if that movie is bad, then, if Angry Birds is bad, if we think it's a D or below, I'm going to get some points out of it. If it's B or higher, I'm going to lose some points out of it. And the same thing will happen with.
I forget. Do I still gain the D points?
You gain your normal amount of points.
Okay, so it's not like
normally gain. You don't steal points from me, and I don't take points from you. Gotcha. It's just extra points, or I lose points, and then the same thing. So yeah, that's how that works. So I'm excited too. Oof.
I know it's gonna. I think it's still gonna be close at the end, but I feel like you had two really strong picks with Tomb Raider. And now Ni no Kuni. So I think we'll see. We'll see how it falls. But I'm not feeling confident by any means.
Yeah. Well,
I'm regretting picking Angry Birds at all. But I feel like at the time it was the best case scenario for me.
I'm excited to make next year's or next season's list.
I know.
You know.
Yeah.
I think we could probably do it in a similar manner where you watch episode 153 to get the full scoop. But
Snake Draft.
Excuse me. Snake Draft. But the pools we picked from, there was 2 pools. There were movies I handpicked that I'm like, these are important, I think. I haven't seen any of these films, otherwise it'd be unfair. Because obviously I would know if one was good or not. Really good or not. I've heard bad things about Ratchet and Clank, but I didn't watch that movie. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I handpicked some. I think half were handpicked and the other half were completely randomized off our giant spreadsheet of all video game movies. With some rules on no repeat franchises and stuff like that, and no duplicate Uwe Boll films. And then there were some that were not picked. There was 6 films that were left behind. So go ahead and watch episode 153 if you want to see what those other options were. I don't remember any of them.
Me either. I remember at the time being like, Angry Birds is the most familiar name on this board, and it might not be good, but later in the draft, maybe I get a D out of this. Maybe it might be clutch. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. In any case, we're in the home stretch now. Only 3 films left to go. In the meantime, though, hey, you're going to watch us, because you want to make sure that you catch these next episodes. You're going to make sure that you follow us on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Sonic Movie Show. We're also on podcast platforms. If you're watching us on your computer and you want to listen to us while you're driving your car without watching us, because that's dangerous.
If you're getting chased by Spotify. a spider, and you want something to listen to, our show is a great recommendation.
She wrecked her car for a kid who she will no longer remember.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Where
does she remember the spider though? But does she remember the spider? Probably not. No idea.
She should have gotten better out of it. I mean, think of it this way: Yusuke's gonna see his captain of the guard be a woman he knows very well because she's raised him, helped raise him. Give him a constant
reminder, yeah.
And I don't know if he knows that she forgot about him, but it's gonna be weird. I don't know.
That's a good question. Does he forget? Is that also part? Is it flipped where he forgets because he never went there anyways? That's even more sad.
This movie's S rank. The questions we ask ourselves. No, we're not changing that. Follow us on all those places. Let us know what you thought about the Ni no Kuni film, especially if you've played any of the Ni no Kuni video games. I would like to know what you think. I'm on Twitter at Ethan Absolutely. Devin's on Twitter at CursonaFun.
It's X now. Come on.
We call it Twitter. Goodbye. See ya. Have a good one. Goodbye. We'll talk to you later.
Good afternoon.
See ya. Have a fantastic day. Goodbye.
Auf Wiedersehen.